So we've been talking a lot about racism, but another term that we've been hearing, listening a lot about, people talk about lately is colorism. What is colorism? Colorism.
Colorism, we can talk a lot about it, but we can start out by defining it as a system that uses color to classify people, to segregate against people, um, and and it's related to racism because color is but one of the physical attributes that are part of race as a social construct. And so historically, colorism is related to European colonization of the Americas, Africa, and Asia. In other words, the contact of Europeans, so called white, with people who were so called non white. And with time, with European might in these areas, white came to be seen as the color with the most prestige. So whichever color is closest to white is going to be more prestigious, and that is colorism. And so in that schema, the darkest colors will have the lowest prestige. So we can trace a historical development of the term, and we can also see that geographically there have been variations in different areas. So, for example, in Brazil, we know that people have all kinds of expressions. For example, money whitens, and so if money whitens, the idea is even if the person's color is darker, if the person has more money because dark skin is associated with slavery, the person who is lighter skinned would be treated as if the person were white or closer to white. That doesn't happen necessarily in real life, but that's the image that people have, and that actually there are examples of that. Um, in the United States, people erroneously think that in the United States, like especially here in Brazil, no, it's like it's black against white, and or like black on one end, white on the other end, and there is no gradation. But that is historically inaccurate because at least until the end of the 19th century, even the census of the United States counted people according to gradations in the amount of quote unquote black blood that they had. So you would see in the census, the number of people who were white, the number of blacks, the number of mulattoes, the number of quadroons, octoroons, etc. And then with the end, after that, it's like, well, no, it's everybody's black. Color doesn't matter. But that was not true because among blacks, for example, they continue to see that difference. There is an expression, the better class of colored people. Those were blacks. According to the law, they were black, but they were lighter, tended to be lighter skinned. They tended to have more money. Many of them were descendants of former slave owners who had left some inheritance to them. And they even, uh, encouraged their children to marry those who were as light as them. There is even in that first Roots series, from the 1970s, Kunta Kinte and all of that. One of the descendants of Kunta Kinte already I think in the beginning of the 20th century, she's darker skinned, and she falls in love with a lighter skinned Negro, right? It was the term used at the time. And her father prevented her from marrying him. And I remember that scene. I saw that as, when it first came out. And he said, "You can't marry him." She said, "Well, why not? But we're in love." No, because he is too dark to be white and too light to be a Negro. So, so he's a hybrid. He's neither one nor the other. And she said, "Then I'll never marry." And she became the family spinster. So Um, Blacks recognize that, and whites do too. Give, but they may not be aware of it because this is doesn't happen anymore, but um, up until the 1960s, it was common. Well, I'm not going to say it was common because we can only estimate how many people did that. But blacks who were very light skinned, who anywhere else in the world would be considered white, but in the United States, passed as white. What was that? Well, they assumed a new identity, a white identity. They gave up their earlier identity, their family. They changed, they moved so that people could not say, "I know him. He's not white," because that could lead to dire consequences. Another example is in the United States, there's plenty of reliable evidence showing that lighter skinned blacks earn more and have higher educational levels than darker skinned blacks. Among Latinos, lighter skinned Latinos fare better than darker skinned Latinos, health wise, income wise, even in marriage rates. In Asia, the brown Asians, Filipinos, are differentiated from the lighter Asians who are like Japanese, Chinese, Koreans. And I'll give you another example. Even in Africa, even in sub-Saharan Africa, people who wish to some people wish to lighten their skin, but they cannot afford to go to the doctor and have peeling sessions and chemical peels. So they'll do the peels themselves by using toothpaste or bleach and even battery fluid, substances that will forcibly remove the outer layers of the epidermis and then of the skin, but that can cause lesions. They could even lead to melanoma, to cancer, because they're so aggressive. And in any event, the effects are temporary because after 28 days, the skin renews itself. And so it's a process that has to be continuous. So if people continue to put battery fluid in their skin, they'll get sick. So, but that's the extent to which there is a color complex, which is another way of looking at colorism.